your inner voice. Who is speaking? How many times have you heard that voice? The one that whispers to you in the morning when you look in the mirror. The one that comments on your every step, every decision, every thought. It's so familiar that it seems like your own, yet so foreign, as if it belongs to someone else. Who is it, this inner narrator of your life? And why do its words sometimes sound as if they're spoken not by you yourself? In the depths of our consciousness lives an entire choir of voices. Some criticize, others encourage. Some forbid, others permit. But where do they come from? And what happens when we begin to distinguish them? Your inner voice is not born in a void. It's formed from thousands of heard phrases, intonations, evaluations. The mother who told you, "Be careful." The father who repeated, "You must be strong." The teacher who insisted that you need to try harder. These voices settle within us, become part of our inner landscape, and over time we begin to think that we ourselves are talking to ourselves. But if you listen more carefully, you can hear familiar intonations in your inner monologue. There's the strict tone of grandmother, the demanding voice of your first boss, the judgmental whisper of a school friend. They live in us as invisible interlocutors, influence our decisions, shape our attitude toward ourselves and the world. In transactional analysis, these are called parental messages, those rules and attitudes we received in childhood that continue to sound within us for years. Don't stand out. Be perfect. Don't trust anyone. Care for others more than yourself. These voices can protect, but they can also limit, turning into invisible chains that we carry without noticing their weight. Jung called these inner figure archetypal images that populate our psyche, the inner critic who is never satisfied with results, the inner child who wants to play and be accepted, the inner parent who cares and controls simultaneously. Each has its own voice, its own wisdom, and its own shadow. Perhaps right now you're hearing one of these voices. Maybe it's telling you that this is all nonsense, that it's not worth delving into such reflections. Or conversely, it's pushing you to seek answers, to dig deeper. Stop reading for a moment and listen. Whose voice is this? Who does it resemble? What intonation does it use? Is this manner of speaking familiar to you? Realizing that the inner voice is not always our own can be the first step toward inner freedom. When we distinguish these voices, we can choose which one to trust and which one to say, "Thank you, but I'll listen to myself." Sometimes the voice of the inner critic sounds so convincing that we take it for truth. It tells us that we're not good enough, that our dreams are unrealistic, that we don't deserve happiness. But if you listen carefully, you can hear in these words echoes of someone's fears, someone's unfulfilled expectations, someone's unrealized ambitions. This voice often carries the care of those who raised us. A mother who feared we would get hurt transmitted this fear through warnings. A father who couldn't realize his own dreams warned us about the impossibility of hopes. They wanted to protect, but their protection became a voice that now sounds in us as our own. But there's another voice, the one that whispers to us about possibilities, about beauty, about our capacity for more. This voice also has its roots. Perhaps it's the voice of that teacher who believed in our abilities, or a friend who saw potential in us. It's the voice of those who loved us not for achievements, but simply for being who we are. Between these voices unfolds a constant dialogue. One says, "Don't risk." Another whispers, "Try." One insists, "Be like everyone else." Another calls, "Be yourself." And in this inner parliament, each voice has the right to exist, but not everyone has the right to make decisions. The true art of living lies in learning to be an attentive listener to your inner world, not to suppress voices, not to ignore them, but to listen with understanding and compassion. After all, each of them once tried to protect us, teach us, guide us. When we become aware of the origin of our inner voices, we can thank them for their care and choose which one to trust at this moment. We can tell the inner critic, "Thank you for wanting to protect me from failures, but now I choose risk. We can address the voice of fear. I hear your concern, but now I trust my ability to cope. This doesn't mean we should reject all inner voices except one. On the contrary, wisdom lies in creating an inner council where each voice can express its opinion. But the final decision is made by our true self, that which stands at the center of all these voices and can hear them without losing itself. This center is not another voice, but rather the silence in which all voices can sound without drowning each other out. It's a space of awareness where we can observe the play of inner voices like a director watching actors on stage. Sometimes the most difficult thing is to distinguish the voice of our true self among the choir of inner advisors. This voice is usually quieter than others. It doesn't shout or insist. It simply knows. It tells us about what truly matters, what brings genuine joy, what corresponds to our deep nature. This voice can come in a moment of silence, when we finally stop listening to inner chatter and allow ourselves simply to be. It can manifest through intuition, through sudden understanding, through a feeling of rightness about this or that choice. Learning to hear this voice means learning to be at home in yourself. It means creating an inner space where all parts of our personality can coexist without fighting for power over our decisions. Perhaps now, listening to these words, you can already distinguish some of your inner voices. Maybe one of them is telling you that this is all too complicated, that it's easier to live without thinking about such things. Maybe another is whispering that this is exactly what you needed to hear. Each of these voices is part of your story, part of your path. They all deserve understanding, but not all deserve submission. Your task is not to make them silent, but to learn to be their wise listener and fair judge. When we understand who is speaking within us, we gain the ability to choose which voice to entrust with managing our lives. We can thank the voice of caution for its care, but choose courage. We can value the voice of perfectionism for its striving for quality, but choose acceptance of imperfection. This is not a battle with inner voices, but a dance with them, a dance in which we lead, but while hearing the music they play. This is the art of living in harmony with yourself, not suppressing parts of your personality, but not allowing them to control your life either. In the end, the most important question is not who speaks within us, but who listens. Who is the one who can hear all these voices but doesn't dissolve in them? Who is the one who can choose which voice to trust and which one to simply say, "Thank you, I hear you"? This listener is you, the real you. The one who exists in the silence between thoughts, in the space between inhale and exhale, in the moment of pure awareness that you are. And when you find this center, this inner home, all voices become simply guests. Welcome guests who bring their gifts and wisdom, but don't claim to rearrange the furniture or decide what's for dinner. Your inner voice is not one voice, but an entire choir. And you're not one of the singers, but the conductor of this choir. You can listen to each voice, appreciate its contribution, but the final melody is your melody, your life, your unique way of being in this world. So who speaks within you? Many. But who listens? That's you yourself. And in this listening, in this conscious presence with your inner world, genuine freedom is born, the freedom to be yourself. But let's delve even deeper into this mystery of inner voices. Imagine that your psyche is an ancient theater where a performance constantly unfolds on stage. Actors change, roles vary, but the show never ends. Each inner voice is an actor performing their role, honed by years of rehearsal. One of the brightest actors on this inner stage is the voice of the inner mother. It can be tender and caring, reminding you of the need for rest, that you deserve love and understanding. But sometimes this same voice becomes demanding and critical, repeating phrases familiar from childhood. You should be better. What will people think? You can't be so selfish. This voice of the inner mother was formed not only from the words of your real mother, but also from images of motherhood that you absorbed from culture, books, films. It interweaves society's expectations of what a woman should be with personal experience of receiving maternal care or its absence. Beside it sounds the voice of the inner father, the one that can inspire achievements, call for courage, but can also demand constant proof of your worth through success and accomplishments. You must be strong. Weakness is unacceptable. The world is harsh. Be ready to fight. These messages can sound even when you simply want to allow yourself to be vulnerable. There's also the voice of the inner child, the very one that remembers the pain of rejection, the fear of being misunderstood, the desire to be accepted at any cost. This voice can whisper, "What if they don't love me if I'm real? Better to be convenient than lonely. I must earn love." But among all these voices, there's one special one, the voice of inner wisdom. It sounds less often than others. It's harder to hear in the noise of daily life. This voice doesn't hurry, doesn't insist, doesn't frighten. It simply knows. It tells you that your worth doesn't depend on external achievements, that your intuition deserves trust, that your needs matter. This voice of inner wisdom is not something that comes from outside. It's your own deep nature, which knows who you really are, beneath all masks and roles. But it's so easy not to hear it among the loud demands of other inner voices. Interestingly, each inner voice has its function in our psyche. The inner critic, for example, tries to protect us from possible mistakes and failures. It remembers all the times we faced criticism and tries to prevent repetition of painful experience. But its protection can become a prison where we're afraid to do something new, to risk, to express ourselves. The voice of the inner perfectionist also has good intentions, that wants us to be the best, to be proud of us, so we don't experience shame for imperfection. But its demands can be so high that we never feel good enough. There's also the voice of the inner people pleaser, the one that learned to receive love and acceptance through satisfying others' needs. It whispers, "Say what they want to hear. Don't upset them. Your needs aren't as important." This voice formed in childhood when we understood that being good meant getting more attention and fewer conflicts. But what happens when we begin to distinguish these voices? What changes in our lives when we stop automatically submitting to them and begin consciously choosing which voice to trust? First, what changes is the feeling of inner freedom. When you understand that the voice telling you you're not good enough is not the truth about you, but just an old recording left from someone's fears or unfulfilled ambitions, you can choose not to believe this voice. Second is the appearance of inner space for choice. Between stimulus and reaction appears a pause in which you can ask yourself, whose voice is this? What is it trying to tell me? Do I really want to follow this advice right now? Third is the development of capacity for self-compassion. When you understand that your inner voices are not enemies, but parts of you that tried to protect and help, you can relate to them with understanding rather than irritation or struggle. The practice of distinguishing inner voices is not a one-time revelation, but daily work. It's an art that requires patience and tenderness toward yourself. Sometimes you'll forget to listen. Sometimes you'll automatically follow familiar patterns, and that's normal. It's part of the human experience. It's important to remember that the goal is not to silence all inner voices except one correct one. The goal is to create an inner democracy where each voice can be heard, but the final decision is made consciously. Imagine that your psyche is a round table where all your inner voices sit. The inner critic expresses its concerns. The inner child shares its needs. The inner sage offers its view of the situation. Each has the right to speak, but the chairman of this council is you, your aware self. You can listen to all opinions, thank each for their contribution, but make the decision independently, based on what truly matters in this moment, what corresponds to your deep values, what leads to growth and development, rather than limitation and fear. This inner work requires time and practice, but gradually you begin to notice how the quality of your life changes. You become more authentic because you act from your true needs rather than automatic reactions. You become calmer because you're not waging constant inner war with yourself. Your relationships with people change too. When you begin to distinguish your inner voices, you better understand others' inner voices as well. You see when someone speaks from fear and when from love. You cannot take someone's criticism personally, understanding that it's a manifestation of their inner pain or insecurity. Paradoxically, the more you accept your inner voices, the less they control you. When you stop fighting them, they stop shouting so loudly. When you listen to them with understanding, they feel heard and can relax. This doesn't mean that inner conflicts disappear completely. They remain, but your attitude toward them changes. You begin to perceive them not as a problem to be solved, but as a natural part of the richness of your inner life. In moments of important decisions, you can consciously turn to your inner voices as advisors. What does my inner critic think about this decision? What risks does it see? What does my inner child feel? What does it want? What does my inner wisdom suggest? Such an approach makes the decision-making process more conscious and harmonious. You consider different aspects of the situation, but don't allow any one voice to dictate your choice. Over time, you may notice that some inner voices begin to transform. The inner critic can become an inner mentor who helps you see areas for growth, but does so with love rather than judgment. The inner child can become a source of creativity and spontaneity rather than just fears and need for approval. This transformation happens not through struggle or attempts to change voices by force, but through acceptance and understanding. When inner parts feel heard and understood, they naturally evolve into more mature and wise versions of themselves. And in this process, you discover an amazing truth. You are not any of your inner voices. You are the one who hears them. You are the space of awareness in which all these voices can exist. You are the silence that underlies all sounds. This realization brings deep peace. When you understand that your true nature is not the content of thoughts and feelings, but awareness itself, you gain stability that doesn't depend on external circumstances or inner storms. Your inner voices continue to exist, but now they're like clouds in the sky. They come and go, change shape and intensity, but the sky remains unchanged. You are the sky, not the clouds. From this place of inner silence and stability, you can relate to your inner voices with wisdom and compassion. You can appreciate their contribution to your life, learn from them, but not allow them to determine who you are. So who speaks within you? Many. But who listens? That's always you. And in this listening, in this conscious presence with your inner world, you find the way home to yourself, to your true nature, to that deep wisdom that was always with you, even when you forgot about it. Your inner voice is a symphony, not a solo. And you're not one of the instruments in this orchestra. You're the one who listens to the music, who can appreciate the beauty of each sound and the harmony of the whole. In this listening, genuine freedom is born, the freedom to be yourself in all your complexity and beauty.